In this lecture, we're going to talk about food enrichment. And food enrichment is basically any enrichment that would include food. So we are going to talk about the concept of ditching the bowl, where you can also find the ebook I created in the download section, as well as the concept of contra-freeloading, do's and don'ts when using enrichment toys, some tips for using food enrichment, and easy swaps you can make, as well as some guidance on how to avoid overfeeding, especially if you basically split the daily food allowance onto different parts of your dog's day. So during training, bowls, puzzle toys, enrichment toys, whatever. So to keep basically a good overview of how to avoid overfeeding, and also to keep track of what you feed and how much you feed. And as always with all the other enrichment categories, you will also find a list of food enrichment ideas in the downloadable section. So when we talk about food enrichment, I would like to introduce the concept of ditching the bowl. It's an absolute dogs concept, and you can also find some ideas on Instagram with the hashtag ditch the bowl. And so ditching the bowl basically means you are no longer feeding your dog from like the normal dog bowl, so the bowl you would usually use to feed your dog. And the first question that I feel like comes to mind is, oh my god, isn't this cruel? Oh, the poor dog. So it does not mean you starve your dog, obviously, so your dog would still get their daily food. You just basically swap how you feed. So feeding your dog from a normal bowl, you probably be like, oh my god, this is super convenient, why would I change this, right? So of course this is probably like the easiest way for you to just toss everything in a bowl and provide your dog with a bowl. And while this might be the most convenient version for you, it is probably not the best version for your dog. And we will talk about the concept of contra-freeloading in the next slide, but I just want to give you some points that might actually want you to maybe rethink whether you want to ditch the bowl or not. It doesn't mean you completely have to get rid of the bowl. There's definitely exceptions. So for me, for example, with my senior dog, I feed sometimes from a bowl because it's an raised feeder. So there might be reasons why you want to keep this up. However, maybe not the full allowance. So one thing to keep about is that your dog has the meal quickly without stimulation in a relatively unnatural way, right? So dogs are scavengers who like to forage, and we will talk about foraging as well in a bit. And for me, this became quite obvious when I adopted street dogs because, well, they basically, and I have like proper street dogs, right? So they're like unbred dogs. They're wadi dogs. So for them, how they survive in the wild is they live in human-centered environments where they basically forage through the garbage bins, etc., to find food. So this is how they have been brought up for generations. So for me, this became really obvious when I adopted these two. And then I introduced also the concepts more and more to my other two dogs. But also it's, not like it's not really the most natural, but also not really any stimulation. They just eat it and it's gone. If you have a dog like some of mine who just eat too quickly, this can have also serious health implications for your dog and can be quite dangerous. So if they, for example, just inhale their food, just eat it really quickly, they're also taking quite a lot of air, so this can be quite unhealthy for your dog. Ditching the bowl does not mean you have to feed everything, for example, by hand. This could also mean you swap the bowl for a plate, or you swap the bowl for a slow feeder, etc. So to help your dog slow down their mealtime. And even by just feeding your dog from a plate rather than a bowl, you give your dog choice because they basically can choose what to eat first. If you have a variety of food on the plate, as well as giving them something to do for their mind when they, for example, have a slow feeder with some raised bits in between to slow them down. Also, food is one of the strongest, if not the strongest motivator for a dog. So if you feed them, you basically just ditch a lot of value in a bowl. So you don't have any interaction with your dog or use food to strengthen the bond you and your dog have. So, for example, I'm not a big fan of feeding the whole food allowance during training. However, you can provide them with better experiences than just eating out of a bowl. So you can use a slow feeder as well as something where they can problem solve, where they have something to do and just basically have a good time getting to the food and being rewarded for their efforts, as well as taking some of their daily food allowance for training and for rewarding them during the day by, for example, having just simple food stations on your desk. So you can reward calm behavior, etc. And you can strengthen the bond your dog has with you. As I said, I'm not a big fan of feeding everything like the whole meal just by hand. First of all, because I find it quite impractical with like 4 dogs. but also I don't want them to be completely, you know, just dependent on me when I give them food. Like, well, obviously they are, but I don't want them to, you know, just have to work for food in a training context with me all the time. So for me, I pop a good part of their meal into slow feeders or plates, as well as enrichment toys. And I also will just upload a video what a normal day of enrichment or food enrichment would look like for us, so you can get an idea how we manage this while having ditched the bowl in most cases. As I said, my senior is a bit of the exception. But yeah, so this is very easy, and it's a very easy swap, so not much effort, and it just makes a real big difference to my dog's happiness, as well as yeah, just giving them something to do, preventing boredom and frustration. I will also include some ways how I prep or meal prep for my dogs, because yeah, I'm quite a lazy person, and I'm very efficient, but I'm quite lazy, so I don't want to start and cook fresh every time, or, you know, prep all the things literally when I need them on the go. I do this once in a while, and then, for example, freeze parts of it, or use also certain tools where filling enrichment toys just goes so much quicker, rather than trying to stuff a toy with a spoon or anything. So all of this will be also shown and demonstrated, as well as links for you. So I will add all of this in so you can, yeah, get some inspiration and also basically get a guide from a lazy person. So I would like to talk with you about contra-freeloading, and in case you're not convinced yet that ditching the bowl might be worth trying out, then contra-freeloading was for me something that made just so much sense. And contra-freeloading is the behavior seen in most animals, that when an animal is offered a choice between free food or identical food that requires effort, the animal prefers the food that requires effort. And you have maybe experienced this yourself. If you have a dog, for example, who has access to their food in a bowl the whole day, very often they go off of their food, or they don't want to eat the food, or are very picky. And by basically just providing an experience in how they get their food, it can be way more rewarding. And this is in a nutshell the concept of contra-freeloading. So to answer the question from the earlier slides, it's not cruel. It's actually very enriching for your dog to not just having to eat out of a bowl. So while we talk about concepts, let's also talk about foraging. And foraging is basically, and this is a definition from Cambridge Dictionary, to go from place to place searching for things that you can eat. And I said to you that for my Wadi dogs, for my street dogs, this was a very natural behavior anyways, because this is what feral dogs do, right? But it's also for our normal pet dogs. It's something that is in their genes. So dogs are scavengers. They are natural scavengers, and they find foraging highly rewarding. So this is, for example, one of the experiences you can provide for your dog. It's very easy for you to provide, but you can really make your dog happy with it. And I will show you in the videos the level of engagement you can get when you play Find It, or just, you know, basically just, if you can't be bothered, just dropping kibble in the grass. It's as easy as this. So yeah, it's very easy, it's very simple, but it has great benefits for your dog. So why should you provide it? It's a fundamental need for your dog, and it's highly satisfying for them. And very often in the domestic environments, and I don't say this just for dogs who have been feral, but literally every dog, our environment and the environments our dogs live in with us, they are not always like the most dog friendly. They are human-centered environments, right? So any domestic environment, it's not just given that they would forage for their food, because, as I said, very often we just pop everything in a bowl for them. So by basically swapping the bowl for something else, and as I said, it can be as simple as throwing kibble in the grass, it's not much more effort. It's probably even less effort sometimes. The benefits definitely outweigh the effort we have to put in. We can enrich our dogs' lives so much more. We can help our dogs to be basically fulfilled and fulfill their needs, to just have happier and more satisfied dogs. So it's very little we have to do in exchange for what we get back from our dogs. So here are some easy ways on how to ditch the bowl. And as I said, there is a whole ebook for you where I popped in a bit more information. But you basically can use your dog's daily food allowance during the day in different ways. So you could use tools like slow feeders, interactive toys, puzzles. You can also use part of the daily allowance for training to reward calmness and provide experiences. And providing experiences can be as simple as scatter feeding, playing find it on your daily walk, or practicing catch with them, or when your dog comes for a recall, you don't just have to let them sit down, but rather maybe throw a piece of food in the other direction so they can have the experience of keeping moving, and also just staying in the movement and then just slowing down to find it, or have them catch, etc. So by basically making the reward experience different from time to time, or playing in which hand, etc., you become more interesting to your dog as well. So the recall is not always just a steady come here and sit, or come here and I will pop the leash on. No, you can just make it a really fun game, which will help you lots with your recall in general as well as your bond. So we're a big fan of enrichment toys, or stuffable toys, stuff like Kong. Soda pop toys are actually one of our favorites, and we use them on a regular basis. So I just thought I will do some do's and don'ts basically when you use these toys. You can find a video on my YouTube channel about the toys or enrichment tools we use on a regular basis. So this is slow feeders, licky muds, toys, etc. We also basically test them for some brands. So yeah, we add constantly to our collection. So if you're interested in anything particular, chances are some of them are on our channel already, which I will link down below. So what you want to do if you use any enrichment toys to build up the value. A Kong in itself might not be interesting for your dog yet. Just use the word Kong. You can literally swap it for whatever toy, right? So you will have to build up the value, and you can do this by making it super easy. So literally as easy as pop in something. Let your dog watch how you pop in maybe a piece of chicken into a Kong or any other toy, and then let them get it out. Or kibble. Just make it so easy that it literally just falls out at the beginning. And if your dog needs help at any stage, you're there to help them. And then you can build up the challenge, but you totally do want to avoid frustration. You don't want your dog get frustrated with the toys, especially when you're in the stage of building up the value of the toy. You want to make it fun, and you want to also make it safe. So basically you want to help your dog have a good experience with this toy, and also building up the value of the toy so that when your dog sees the toy they get excited. So this is basically what we want to achieve at this stage. And in order to not spoil the experience for your dog, you don't want to put on any pressure onto your dog or any expectations, right? So very often like, oh yeah, my dog is really smart, so why doesn't he or she get it immediately? They don't have to. It's very different like to use a toy or a puzzle if they haven't used this before. So don't have any expectations of what your dog should be doing or should be knowing or should be able to do. Just give them time and also help them. Also, please don't buy the toys too small because they're cheaper. You want to make sure they are good quality. You also want to make sure they can't swallow them and they're not a choking hazard. And also, of course, you do want to check which toys are appropriate for your dog's breed, etc. So the waddies are very patient. Some of them I can get easily the soda pop ones out with like kind of like difficult closing. And I'll show you a few in the other lecture on the different options soda pop has, for example, where you can make it a bit more tricky rather than just having one opening as a Kong has. So for them this is easy, but for my bullies, for them licking it out might just not be as rewarding, so they prefer a topper with an even bigger opening. So just find a toy that is right for your dog. Maybe get we have plenty, so no one needs that many, but yeah, maybe get 2 or 3, or just 1 or 2, and maybe licky mud or something, so you can mix it up and also provide variety for your dog, and just maybe try different flavors, etc. See on Instagram that some people freeze them. Please don't. This makes it incredibly difficult. Please also make sure that your dog is safe while using them. So there are some videos where the tongue got stuck in or whatever. Also, don't leave them unsupervised, especially if it's a new toy you're using or your dog has not yet experienced with any of these toys. So in a nutshell, be safe, have fun, and make it a fun experience for your dog. And yeah, otherwise there's a lot of things you can try out. There's a lot of inspiration you can get. Instagram, Pinterest are really great places to also look for inspiration of what people are doing, how they're using it. You can also use DIY toys and make them yourself, etc. So honestly, like, the options are limitless, and you can just literally have fun with it. So here's some tips on making food enrichment even more interesting. Again, know your dog. This is a recurring theme in the whole course. So know your dog's preferences, intolerances, etc. Check for dog safe foods before you pop them into an enrichment toy, and also ingredients. Not every human food is good for your dog, and also there's foods that are basically toxic for your dog, so you definitely want to avoid these. Also, food is value and can make our dog's day more interesting by replacing the bowl. Pay your dog. So if you have something you train on, you want to pay your dog a good salary. So you can basically give your dog a pay rise by using high value treats as a lower value food for things they are already knowing, or depending on what you feed, you can, for example, use some of their kibble for scatter feeding. But then if it's something like calling your dog off something they find really interesting, or practicing a new skill, etc., you can also give them high value treats like cooked chicken or whatever your dogs really like. Loads of dogs also like the liver paste. So you can basically reward your dog and make it even more interesting for them to come back to you. You can also provide variety to an extent. You don't want to upset their tummy, so don't make too crass switches with your dog's food. If you switch from, for example, kibble to raw or whatever, you do want to transition them slowly, right? So yeah, again, safety first, but you can provide variety, of course, to a certain degree, and you do want to introduce your dogs to this. One easy way to provide variety is by adding fresh foods to their food. And this can be cooked broccoli, this could be carrots, this could be basic dog safe fruits, veggies, meats. So yeah, you can add a lot of things, different chews. You can also search for meal toppers for your dog. You can also bake treats for them. You can cook for them. There's also, for example, butternut box where someone else cooks for your dog. So there's a lot of options, and yeah, you can provide a lot of variety by still having, for example, the base the same, and then just adding things onto their meal. One great book I would recommend when it comes to also providing variety, or maybe just checking out their Instagram account if you don't want to read it, Forever Dog. So they have quite some interesting tips on how to add fresh food and variety to your dog's meals, and why you might want to add certain things. When you mix and match and add stuff to your dog's food, or generally if you feed them in different places, is one thing to keep in mind, that you might lose track of how much you're actually feeding. So here are some tips to avoid overfeeding. So you do want to know your dog's daily food allowance, and you might want to weigh it out and then just take it from there. So you can measure it out and then split the daily allowance for enrichment, training, and meal times. If you give them treats, you can also use smaller pieces and just basically break it up, so you can have more experiences, you can provide more, but still feed the same allowance. You can also check, if you buy treats or food, you can check in the ingredients list for fillers. So basically level up your food or get a high quality food where you have less fillers in the food. You can also make kibble, for example, a bit healthier by adding kibble toppers, or add fresh food, what I just mentioned. So yeah, there's different varieties where you can basically keep an eye on your dog's weight and avoid overfeeding, because we mentioned this in the physical enrichment section. We do want to keep them on a healthy way, so they also keep healthy, they can move, etc., and are not overweight and it's too heavy on their bones. So yeah, while we want to make it fun, we also obviously want to watch our dog's weight.